Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents here on OpenShift TV. Today we are talking about subscription management. We brought in a special guest, but I'm going to hand it over to the one and only Scott McBrien to do his spiel and intro our guest. Scott, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks, Chris. So today we have with us, I think, someone who has the designation of being one of the most loved and hated Red Hatters at Red Hat. Uh, this is Senior Principal Product Manager, Rich Gerito. Rich, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Red Hat?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Rich Dorito. I'm one of the product managers on the subscription management experience team at Red Hat. My team works primarily on almost all of the subscription tooling that most of you see. So subscription manager, subscription watch, cost management, Red Hat subscription management, all of those things kind of fall into our purview. My team's responsibility is to unify our subscription management experience, as well as simplify it and make sure that it fits the personas that are using our technologies.
So, Rich, when people complain about Red Hat products being hard to get, subscription management is often the blame. And I don't think that that's a fair rap,
Mhm.
especially because we've done a lot of stuff like created the developer subscription, which provides a um, free to acquire single subscription that provides access to a whole bevy of Red Hat products, including RHEL and others. Um, what are some rules for thumb that people can use that you think will give them the best experience with subscriptions?
Yeah, so that's actually really good to talk about. So one of the things that we've been working on over here on the Red Hat side has been one, making it just very easy for you to get through the front door of the Red Hat experience, right? And the developer programs are one major part of that, right? We want to make it easy for folks for those development use cases to get access to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, as well as the various other things that layer on top of it. From a subscription management point of view, we've been focused a lot on making sure that our tooling fits the personas of the people who are using them. So when we think about subscription management, historically, we've built a set of tooling that required folks to understand a lot of domain expertise that's very specific to Red Hat. Like if I'm a systems administrator, do I really care about a pool ID? Do I really care about a SKU? That's not language that I'm accustomed to speaking in, right? I'm accustomed to hearing, hey, I need to add 3 more web servers to this particular cluster, right? So
Mhm.
my team has been focused on separating that complexity from the operations personnel who care about things like managing servers, managing apps, managing workloads, while also understanding that, yes, in a corporate setting, we do need to keep track of how much we're deploying. In the past, we've kind of merged those two capabilities into one set of tool, trying to satisfy the people who count the beans and the people who manage the systems. And we weren't really good at satisfying either. So now we're taking more of an approach of we want to start separating those two personas, treat them independently. As far as some best practices around subscription management, there are a few things I do like to point out. First and foremost is whether you're using satellite or whether you're using Red Hat subscription management. One of the things I like to point folks to is what we call activation keys. Activation keys are a means to kind of predefine how you want to set up a system when it's registered, right? It'll cover certain things like which repositories do you want to enable by default. It'll also cover things like what subscription you want to attach. And we'll talk about what we're doing around subscription attachment in a minute. But the activation keys are one of those functionalities that make it easy for you to build automation workflows on top of our subscription management tooling and not have to do things like embed passwords into scripts and stuff like that. No one really wants to do that. The other major recommendation that I would point out is from an automation perspective, large amounts of our customers are using Ansible, and Red Hat uses that as our language of the data center. We do expose through the Red Hat subscription module a whole bunch of capabilities around subscription management. So if you want to register systems, if you want to, tear systems down, even if you want to do really advanced stuff like grab information about entitlements and do your own kind of custom reporting, I would point you towards the Red Hat subscription management Ansible module, because that's our primary means of interacting with the subscription services, and that's maintained by our team.
Cool. So you brought up something that I kind of wanted to dive a little bit deeper on. You talked about separating the purchasing from the consumption and utilization. And one of the things that I've heard like a bajillion times over the years is that it's really hard when you're doing purchasing, because essentially once a year you renew your contract with Red Hat, which is what then renews your subscriptions for the next so often. And during that time, you essentially need to decide in the upcoming year, or if you're doing an out year deal, maybe it's like the next 2 or 3 years, what your growth rates are going to look like across those boxes, and essentially pre-purchase them all across the duration of your contract. And I know that you guys have been doing some work on changing that.
Yep. So one of the things, and if I was kind of to put it in very short terms, like if I was trapped in the elevator and someone was like, "What do you do for a living?" and I got to tell it to them in 5 seconds or so, my response would be, I'd make it easy for people to give Red Hat money, right? Like that's my job, right?
Fair enough.
And what that means kind of crosses 2 major areas for us, right? The first one is making it so that you can acquire Red Hat technologies through whatever modality that makes sense, right? Historically, Red Hat has been a company that sold, yearly subscriptions or 3-year or 5-year subscriptions. Now, as the world is becoming more, I hate to use the word agile, but as the world has different needs,
Fluid.
1 year, fluid, right?
There you go.
1-year subscriptions may not necessarily be the best way to purchase Red Hat technologies. Right. So you see this a bit in the public cloud. You can go to like an Amazon or an Azure and you can purchase RHEL by the hour. Right. We are looking at, my team, along with some of the business folks in Red Hat, we're looking at introducing new ways to buy Red Hat products across the portfolio, not just RHEL. Right. Even, we're working with the OpenShift team. We're working with the Ansible team as well. Right. Because the business folks are always trying to tweak their models to best satisfy the customer need. And my team's responsibility is to make sure that as they do that, we have the correct tools in place to ensure that you can count that stuff, right? If you want to buy by the hour, that's great. But at some point, you're going to want to know, does it make sense to now buy by the year or vice versa? So it's kind of a twofold problem, right? There's the programmatic go-to-market business side of it. And then there's also the, I need to go look in a dashboard to see how much I'm spending part of it. And that's what my team focuses on building.
And you guys released a product not too long ago that helps with that dashboard view.
Yep, we have released 3 products. We were busy, but yes. So for our yearly subscription customers, we released in Summit 2020 a capability called Subscription Watch. That is a SaaS-based dashboard. It lives at cloud.redhat.com. It runs on the same platform as Red Hat Insights, as well as Red Hat OpenShift Cluster Manager. The purpose of Subscription Watch is to provide that holistic, account-wide view of where you're running those Red Hat technologies. So, if you think about the average, moderate to large size customer, you got stuff all over the place, right? You got some stuff on premise. You might got some stuff on the public cloud. You probably got stuff in more than one public cloud. And when it comes time to just wrap your head around where's everything at, it's always been kind of hard to do. And Subscription Watch is really targeted at punching into those high quality data sources that we already have and learning about your environment and visualizing that to you, not only as a current state, but we also show that to you over time. So I can log into Subscription Watch today. I can see how many sockets of RHEL am I running on the public cloud? Which public cloud am I running them on? Right? Maybe I prefer one public cloud provider to the other. What kind of RHEL is it? Is it physical? Is it virtual? And I can slice and dice that inventory based upon all the things that make up a Red Hat subscription. Stuff like what's the usage type? Is it a development usage, or is it a production usage, or SLA, right? Is it standard support or premium support? And this capability,
can you enlarge that font, please, for me?
Let's see.
And that capability is available to all Red Hat customers. It is a value of the Red Hat subscription. It's not a thing that you have to purchase, as an additional add-on subscription. Today, we support RHEL and OpenShift in Subscription Watch, and we are diligently working to expand our coverage of the entire Red Hat portfolio. Our next two products up are going to probably be Smart Management and Smart Management and Ansible.
And I went ahead and pulled up my own subscription watch, which is not very interesting. So we have it was 3,000 or so subscriptions that we use for demos and other stuff. Those were up for renewal, so that's now almost 8,000 subscriptions, and then 3,000 are going to drop off that list. So my top bar right here is kind of all my subscriptions lumped together, and down here the much smaller than it used to be line is my day-to-day usage over time.
So you can actually pull up the drop down on the right-hand side where it says daily, and you can actually take that back almost a year, and that'll show you kind of some of your usage over time. So yeah, so we're required to, I believe, hold this data for 4 years. So when it comes time, let's start to make those purchasing decisions, like how much RHEL are we going to need next year? While we can't truly forecast it, we can give you what you've used in the past, and that may be, depending on how your organization deploys, it may be indicative of what you might need in the future. Yeah,
and for me, like my boxes exist for all of 30 minutes at a time, and then essentially I strip the entitlement from them and throw it away, and then reuse it for the next box that comes in for 30 minutes. So that's why we just kind of see this little lump. You could see in December, there was a hump there because that was me not removing subscriptions as I was out on PTO, and kind of let them accumulate a little bit.
So one of the things that I do want to point out with Subscription Watch that we are introducing across multiple cloud providers is we are introducing what we call high precision reporting. So today, if you look at Subscription Watch, what you're seeing is a daily snapshot of your inventory that we evaluate once a day, right? So one of the challenges that you have with a daily snapshot is that there are lots of folks who have workloads that live and die inside of a 24-hour period, right? And in some use cases, those may be purchased by the hour from the cloud provider. In some use cases, they may use a yearly subscription for them. In either case, anything that happens inside of the day, we historically weren't able to visualize inside of Subscription Watch. We introduced a high precision reporting capability. It's currently available for Amazon. We're going to be releasing it soon for other cloud providers like Azure and Google. But what that gives you basically is gives you the ability to configure an authentication credential, so an ARN in the case of Amazon. And that allows us to walk through the Amazon API, and we'll actually have precise start and stop times of your instances. So we can actually visualize down to basically the nanosecond when those images or instances come online and go offline. So that's, again, we're trying to give you that level of precision so that you understand your usage, because in many cases, we are going to have to make purchasing decisions based upon that. In some cases, it may make sense to purchase from the cloud provider. Other cases, it may make sense to purchase from Red Hat. My job is to give customers the information that empowers those decisions.
Cool. Yep. So we got a question in chat, or two questions probably have the same answer kind of deal. This is from Detcon Kudo. One of the big problems I have is free-form provisioning of RHEL for CI/CD workers and for developer use, where the machines may not be persistent more than a day at a time. Most of that CI/CD infrastructure can't configure subscription managers. So how do we deal with this break in the experience, right? Like still need RHEL in the pipeline, but not long-term.
So the way the way we've addressed it is kind of twofold, right? I mean, at its very simplest, right, before I go into the next piece of technology, it basically boils down to we have the capability so you don't have to attach subscriptions anymore, period. Okay. We call that capability simple content access, right? And this goes to kind of what I was talking about earlier about we want to put a separation between the folks who need to care about subscriptions and the folks who don't, right? And in a CI/CD pipeline, I probably don't need to care about subscriptions. I also don't want to take the time and expense to actually go through the process of assigning subscriptions, right? So SCA is really designed to address that, right? So the experience we are targeting is a register and run experience. So if you own RHEL, you should be able to register a RHEL system, run a RHEL system. Entitlements should not get in your way. That's what SCA allows you to do. So doing things like building CI/CD pipelines becomes simpler because we don't have to do a entitlement attachment as part of that process. As a interesting side effect is because we're not doing all the entitlement logic when we register a system, registration happens on average, this is environmental dependent, but registration happens 5 to 10x faster. Okay, wow. So those are major improvements, right? We want to get you to that front door as easily as possible. I mean, we still require registration. However, I want to make that process as lightweight and low touch as possible. And then I guess I mentioned SCA. I haven't mentioned how you actually get it and use it.
I'm dropping links. I'm digging up links and dropping them.
Yeah. So simple content access is currently available for our satellite customers. Satellite customers who are on version 6.5 and above can leverage simple content access. For our non-satellite customers, we're looking to release that early this spring. We do have a limited availability release. So if you're interested right now, reach out to your account team and we can get you hooked up with that technology.
Cool. Like that's going to help a lot of people, myself included.
Yeah, and for not using simple content access, when I provision boxes, they get provisioned. There's essentially a subscription manager register with activation key. It assigns their channels of content. And then what I'd like to have happen is when the system gets destroyed, I would love for it to be able to do a subscription manager unregister, but for whatever reason, my provider doesn't give a free teardown of the instance scriptability.
Mm-hmm.
So that one causes me to have many sad days as I go through and clean everything up. But there is an API for doing it too, so you can write a script and kind of programmatically manage.
I think we already have a script for that. Like I feel like at some point in my Red Hat career, I wrote that script because I got tired of people like you yelling at me.
Yeah, no, so we did, but there's been a whole bunch of changes to the publicly facing API for Red Hat Subscription Manager, and so it has changed. And my script was the old one as well, and I just need to go through and update it and take care of it. One day, my ever-growing list of to-dos will just continue to get longer.
All our to-dos always get longer. So there's one question I answered. You mentioned detailed subscription usage on AWS. Is this also planned or currently available on other clouds like IBM, Azure, GCP?
So planned, yes. ETA, we're still working that out. But yeah, we want to basically, we're kind of working from a little bit of a deficit here to be completely transparent. Like my team's relatively new at Red Hat. So we got to catch up on all the ways that Red Hat sells all the things. And we've kind of been doing them in a priority order of what are the most common ways that people procure our products. So we've been tackling yearly subscriptions and RHEL and OpenShift and Ansible, more traditional models first. That being said, right, we know folks are using Red Hat stuff on the public cloud. So we do want to introduce that high precision reporting across all the clouds.
Rich also has a couple of doggos that are his coworkers now.
I mean, my dog is the Commerce Township Red Hat Office Employee of the Month every month. It never fails. I keep losing to my dog. It's sad.
So, Rich, if we could change gears a little bit, what tools do you think Red Hat customers would be surprised to know exist that your team has been working on?
So besides SCA, which I kind of feel like I'm going to shamelessly plug it, just because I'm never going to pass an opportunity to. Subscription Watch is the other one, right? Subscription Watch is that cloud-based dashboard. And then the third tool in our portfolio, and I'm going to really hurt this dog if she don't shut up.
No animals were harmed in the filming of this stream.
But the third capability that my team offers is a capability for OpenShift called cost management. And it enables our customers to see kind of vertically how much does an OpenShift application cost them running on a public cloud, right? And we do have that capability available for both Amazon and Azure. So again, just kind of look across Red Hat's entire portfolio. No matter where you land in that portfolio, my team's going to be delivering or have delivered a set of capabilities to help you understand subscription management, which when you really think about it at its core, subscription management is really just a proxy for cost management, right? And cost management for OpenShift is probably the big thing I would point to folks. I mean, like that's a thing that we have, and that's included with an OpenShift subscription. So if you have OpenShift, that's not an additional add-on you have to buy. We generally like to bundle things on the Red Hat side, but that's a capability that we have that's available. And then the last thing I talk about is not really a product, but it's just a capability in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I think is very much worth taking a look at is a capability called system purpose, right? And system purpose is it's a technology we introduced around the RHEL 8 timeline because in RHEL 8 we simplified the actual content of RHEL 8. So we needed some metadata to help us understand how are you using that system? Is this the RHEL server? Is this the RHEL workstation? The reason why that's important is because when I kind of put all these things together, right? Simple content access, it's all about the ops guys, right? I'm going to make it simple for them to just use our stuff. Register the box, build the server, build the workload. You don't have to know about subs. Subscription Watch, that targets those buying personas, right? People who at some point got to pay a bill, right? They do need to understand, how much of it have we deployed, where have we deployed it, and in the case of things like, our virtual data center subscriptions, how many hypervisors are using our stuff? But there's a missing link between those two personas, right? Many Red Hat subscriptions are purchased based upon like SLA. You pay a little bit more for premium than you do for standard. Well, how can Subscription Watch count what systems are premium and standard? That's not a thing I can query from the system inherently. It's not a system fact, right? It's not a RPM. So I need to ask you as the systems administrator to tag these systems up, right? And if you tag those systems properly, that information matriculates into Subscription Watch. And that's what helps power those rich charts that we show. And system purpose, just like all of our other subscription stuff, is exposed via the Red Hat subscription Ansible module.
It's also something that can be set at install time through Kickstart or through the graphical installer. And then just to provide a little bit more historical depth there, if you don't mind, it used to be the case that when you registered a subscription, we would choose a subscription out of the subscription pool to assign that box. But there was no method of being like, oh, this is a self-support subscription that should be assigned to this box because it's a short-lived dev box that we don't really need to register and call Red Hat support services or get 24/7 365 the Sun support on. And we didn't really have a method for being like, this is a dev box. How do I make sure that I get a self-support, right? One of those lower cost subscriptions tied to it. And system purpose allows that to happen. So it looks at what you provide as your system purpose. And then if you allow it to, it'll make an automatic decision based off of that to try and align the subscription type that gets assigned to that box to match the system purpose. So if you say that it's a dev or test box, and there's one other criteria, it's escaping me, Rich. Is it self-support?
So your matrix with system purpose is role, usage, and SLA. Basically, what's the workload? Who do you plan on calling? How do you want us to support you? And then lastly, when do you plan on calling? Right? Those are kind of the three or four things about a subscription that are not system facts, that if you tell us, we are able to make better decisions around what subscription you get. So you tell me this box is running RHEL and requires premium, then we're going to go look for RHEL subscriptions that have premium, and we're going to prefer them. We'll fall back and use a standard support subscription on a premium system, but we'd only do that if and only if you don't, have any premium. And then we'll tell you, we'll be like, hey, we put a standard on this box. It doesn't match your preference, but we had to do that to give you content.
Right, and in the status from Subscription Manager, and we'll take a look at this in the demo section a little bit, it actually identifies what the system purpose has been set, as well as what subscription has been assigned, plus whether there's a mismatch between those. But that was one of the first things that we did a couple of years ago to try and allow people to tell us so that we could make better decisions when assigning upon registration what subscription went with their box.
Awesome.
So Rich, what's something you see people do with subscription management all the time that you wish they do differently?
Oh, man. So what do I see them do with subscription management that I wish they do differently? Stop yelling at me about it.
Can't stop, won't stop, Rich.
All right. Okay. So, but seriously, I think the big thing that I see, which is a pattern, which I'm going to call an anti-pattern, is that I've seen folks like to unregister systems and re-register them a lot, right? Like that's a thing I've seen in common workflows. Like I've seen people do this with like Puppet. I've seen people do it with other automation tools, but they'll do something like some kind of like health check. Like if this system can't access this particular repo or what have you, instead of just like enabling that repo, they would unregister the system and re-register it, because it's almost kind of like a registered system is in fact the desired state, right? So I've seen that. I think the other thing that I've seen, which I kind of see less of now, just because folks do kind of understand more of the subscription tools, is I used to see a lot of folks who would have either different types of subscriptions, and they would do like weird things with activation keys where they would attach different types of subscriptions to activation keys, right? And then that's a little bit of a challenge in the subscription tools, because effectively, if you think of an activation key, it's a registration token. It gets you through the front door. It sets up a whole bunch of stuff. So if you think about it in a Unix model, you kind of want these things to be like single purpose, because you can use more than one, right? Which is a pro tip that a lot of people don't know. You can actually use more than one activation key at registration time. But what I would see is I would have folks, they would lob everything in, right? They have OpenShift subscriptions and RHEL subscriptions, and they have it all mixed up and jumbled on the keys. And then one of the challenges is when you do all that, you get non-deterministic behavior, right? And that's one of the things that was an area where we had friction with subscription management. So assuming that you're not going to move over to simple content access, which you really should. I mean, like, I buy you a coffee or a drink of your choosing, please use simple content access. But if you don't, take a look at your activation keys. Your activation keys should generally be fairly single purpose. You should have an activation key to assign subscriptions. You should have an activation key to maybe enable repositories. That way, as you introduce new workloads, you don't have this linear increase in the number of activation keys that you're managing. You can just mix and match them as you need. So those are kind of some things that I see people do in the subscription management space that are kind of anti-patterns that we kind of want to get away from. But one thing I do want to point out is once you move over to simple content access, You no longer need to attach subscriptions to systems, which means you no longer need to attach them to activation keys. So activation keys do in fact become significantly more simplified.
So holding aside simple content access for a second, what you were suggesting for activation key layout is do one that's like rel, which includes base OS and AppSpring repos, a second activation key for Ansible 2.9 repo, a third activation key for HA add-on repos. And then depending on whether your boxes that you're registering need those things, you just apply a combination of those activation keys to the boxes that need to.
Correct.
It's like a Swiss Army knife at that point, right? Like,
yeah,
pull this and this and this and out, and now you got a tool, you know?
So then we have a doc that kind of covers what happens when there's conflicts in activation keys, because obviously, because you can set the same settings on more than one key, we do have to have some conflict resolution. So that is something that is documented. So let's say, for instance, if I, using your example, Scott, I had a rel key, an Ansible key, and an HA key, right? And on the rel key, I say enable base OS and AppStream. But then on the Ansible key, I say disable base OS and AppStream. Which one wins? And that's something you need to be aware of, obviously, because you want to make sure you have the effect that you desire. The short version is the key that is to the rightmost on the command line. That's the one that wins in case of conflicts.
Because it's the one that's applied last, essentially?
Effectively, it's the one that's applied last.
Good to know.
So, Rich, you've been around a long time. I almost always ask this question of guests. And I know that you don't work for rel anymore or ever, but what's something that you see people do with rel that you wish they do differently?
Not patch. Patch your boxes.
I'm like, wait, no, we want them to update.
No, you said what do they don't do? No, I see folks not patch, right? And I mean, prior to me being on the subscription team, I did 4 years in various roles on the satellite team, right? And satellite and rel have, a really strong affinity. And I would see folks not patch their systems. And there's a multitude of reasons, but ultimately almost all of them come down to a perception of risk, right? And then when I would work with customers on the satellite side, right, they're like, I can't patch. Why not? And then almost they give 1,001 reasons, but all of them, when you boil them down to their essence, they were about risk, right? And there are a number of ways, you can go and address risk, right? You can address risk with things like satellite, which allow you to curate the content so you can limit when and which updates are available to systems, right? You can mitigate risk with tools like Ansible. So you can do things like rolling updates or, ways to do automation and testing against the system to make sure it's in a healthy state post-patching, right? There are things that rel offers, like many of rel's lifecycle products like EUS and E04S and some of the other lifecycle streams that give you an even slower than rel release cadence for those critical workloads that require it. Now, which one of those you use, that's going to vary by the organization, right? Many organizations use more than one, but you got to use them. You got to patch, right? Because the longer you defer patching, it's like credit card debt, right? The longer you defer it, the more interest builds up, right? And that's probably a thing. If I say there's a thing that I see people do with rel that I would rather they not do, like uptime means nothing. Patch.
No, yeah, like we have completely done a 180 on uptime, right? Like we should not be proud of high uptime numbers anymore because that means you're not doing maintenance.
Right. Uptime is nothing more than a measure of gross negligence at this point.
Wow, that's a great quote.
And now
I'm going to clip that and save that forever.
Most loved and hated person at Red Hat.
And all of my quotes are available under open source compatible licenses. I do work at Red Hat after all.
Nice.
Good deal.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So shall we transition into a little bit of demonstration for Subscription Manager?
Yeah, let's dive in a little bit. Let's see if we can get some more questions answered here.
Oh yeah, please.
No, I mean, like there's folks asking about like satellite and OCP. I don't think there's any integrations coming there. Subwatch seems to not work for us on OSD, so it's a little nebulous to me. Is there anything coming on that front, Rich?
Yeah, so for OSD and OKE, we're still in development of those capabilities for Subswatch.
Got
So right now, Subswatch really covers just the traditional yearly OpenShift subscriptions.
Awesome.
So like many other people, I used to yell at Rich a lot. And then I discovered something. I installed bash completion in my standard build environment. And all of a sudden, a lot of my complaints about Subscription Manager just vanished because like I was an idiot.
You're not an idiot. You just didn't have tabs, right? You couldn't hit tab and be smart.
I mean, it has a fairly complex lexicon on the command line. And I don't know that it's really easy to remember all the options. But
And also for a Unix command, it's a long command name.
yeah,
That's true.
I mean, life without tab completion is probably not worth living.
There's that.
It's true
And
now.
that's quotable as well.
All right. So I have this box. It's a just a small VM. And you can see when I pull up the status, it's giving me a system purpose mismatch. Because I set the type of usage as development test, but it has a self-support entitlement assigned to it, and that's the mismatch that it's complaining about. And I could go into Web Console here. And go down to the subscriptions tab. And we could go in and adjust what these are if we so desired to kind of do away with that error message. So you can make changes to your system purpose on running systems, and it'll be fine. But I'm going to go ahead and unregister this box. As much as Rich hates people unregistering, finally registered boxes, just because. Sorry, Rich.
It's expensive. That's all.
That's true.
When you register a box, we have to create at least 2, if not more, X.509 certificates that identify that system uniquely globally across every system Red Hat knows about. And we have to provide the X.509 certificates for you to access content. Obviously, anything with crypto takes a little bit of time. So we don't want people doing that in high frequency if they could avoid it.
Well, and that's one of the other, I think, complaints that you likely get a lot is how long it takes to do things like registrations, and that would be a great reason of why it's taking so long. So, because certificate generation is something that just takes what it's going to take.
Cryptography is cryptography, right? You know, it's always going to be heavy compute.
All right, so I went ahead and re-registered it just using my user credentials instead of using the activation key, because I wanted to also take a look at attaching repos to it as well. Rich, do you have a preferred way that I should go about doing that, or should I just fumble my way through it?
Just do it the usual way. I like to see other people do it so I can take notes and tell my UXD folks.
All right. So when it's registered and I need to take a look at what repositories are available for it. So we're going to do subscription manager repos. But we have a lot of repos available. So I'm going to run it once and I'm going to rerun it again with some grepping to pull out the pieces I know I need. Because I know that I need this box registered to the, oh, well, there you go. All right, so let me attach a subscription first.
This is why I'm
How can you
taking
stop
notes.
me, Rich? Why did
Nope.
you stop me?
It's like a
Nope.
quiz. It's like a
Yeah.
quiz almost, right? Like this is like one of those coding interview questions, basically, at this point.
That's why I use activation keys, and it's just all automatically in the thing. Then I don't have to worry about it instead of showing my rear end on Twitch. All right.
We're used to that. Not you specifically, but us in general.
Yeah, I probably should have said auto.
Yeah,
attach
someone in the
first,
chat just said that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to explicitly provide auto anymore.
Oh,
I believe we default that. We've been doing that for about a year or so now.
cool. Okay.
Yeah, we've been looking at simplifying some of the sub commands because some of them are equivalent, like subscribe and attach are actually equivalent sub commands. Subscribe is actually the old one, attach is the newish one. But we weren't able to get that change into RHEL 8. So we obviously can't take it out in the middle of the release.
Mhm.
So you'll see in RHEL 9, the number of subscription manager commands are probably going to be about 3 or 4 fewer sub commands because some of them are duplicates that we just can't drop unless it's a major release stream.
Got it. Makes sense.
So I do want to give a shameless plug here for the repo override command since tab completion shows it up. So Scott, you were talking about things that I see people do with subscription manager that I'd rather they not do. The big one is editing redhat.repos, right? etc.yum.repos.d redhat.repo.
You don't like people mucking with those?
Well, it's ours. We treat it like it's a managed file that you don't own. However, there are times where you may need to edit that file, right? The common one that I see is I have like customers who use the Apple repository, right? And the Apple repository, sometimes you may need to set up like Yum priorities so that a package in Apple doesn't conflict with something that Red Hat provides. Well, you do that by updating the Yum stanza. But if you edit redhat.repos, the next time you run subscription manager refresh, you lose your update. However, you can use subscription manager repo override to provide those Yum stanzas in a manner that subscription manager will persistently honor even after you remove subscriptions or refresh.
What's that face, Chris?
Oh, I'm reading a chat message. I imagine bootstrapping rm/etsy/rhsm-host might be an anti-pattern. Rich is nodding heavily in agreement. So yeah, that might be my second great face of the day. Yeah.
Your first great face is just your normal face? Like
no, I had a wonderful moment when
there are some times when you do need to do that. So one of the kind of intrinsic behaviors of Red Hat subscription tools is that if you instantiate a container on top of a RHEL box, the container by default gets access to its host repositories. So you don't have to register containers explicitly. However, there are times where you may want to register a container explicitly. One, if you want to register it to something other than the same subscription as the host. If you want to register it to something different, like a satellite server, you may want to do that. So in those cases, they're not common, but in those cases, it may make sense to delete that directory. So it's not always an anti-pattern. I won't say it as a universal, don't do it, but it's more of an advanced user feature.
There you go. Okay.
All right, Rich, I want to adjust my system purpose so that I'm not erroring out anymore. I don't know why it's not. Come on now. All right. On the command line, where would I find that?
Syspurpose. Whoa. What are we doing editing files by hand? We give you commands for this. There's a command. Syspurpose. SYS purpose. Syspurpose show. which will show you your current system purpose attributes.
Ooh, today I learned.
Yeah, I had never seen this command either.
Yeah. Wow.
I
Okay.
edit files, Rich. It's who I am. It's
I
what
mean,
do.
you can edit the file, but you didn't have to call subscription manager refresh after you do it. So it's actually more difficult, I guess. So which of the 3 values you want to set?
So I think I need to change the usage because I only have self-support subscriptions. So
you want to change your usage to production. Well, actually, here's how you find out. Run subscription manager list -- consume. List is the subcommand -- consumed. Okay. So this shows you the subscription you currently have attached. So you have a subscription attached that is production usage.
Production.
Right.
Okay.
So you want to change your usage type. So do syspurpose, set usage, set - usage, and production. And I can't remember if this is case sensitive or not. My heart tells me it's not case sensitive, but
we'll find out.
It's Unix after all, so it should be case sensitive.
Right.
Yay! Today I learned syspurpose.
Right. Syspurpose. Right.
Yeah. So
for sure.
So in subscription manager, we're actually moving syspurpose to be a subcommand of subscription manager.
Oh,
so it'll be subscription manager syspurpose. But the syspurpose command will still exist for the entirety of the RHEL 8 lifecycle. But in RHEL 9, it'll be subscription manager syspurpose, just so we can unify all the subscription stuff under one command.
Are you guys planning on in RHEL 9 obsoleting some of those commands that are duplicative of each other, like register and subscribe?
Yeah.
Not
subscribe and attach.
Thank you. Okay. Cool. So that's a little bit on using subscription manager. Anything else I should show as well, Rich?
No, you got the big things, right? I mean, the key things with subscription manager to remember is that activation keys are awesome. So set those up because that allows you to automate all this stuff. Activation keys can set which subscription you want attached. They can set system purpose attributes. So if you didn't set them during RHEL installation time, you can also set them on an activation key. And then you can also cover which repositories you want to enable by default. So for a RHEL system, we enable by default base OS and AppStream for RHEL 8, or just like RHEL 7 server RPMs for earlier versions, because obviously those are universally needed. But if you wanted to always enable like the Ansible RPMs repo or some other code ready builder or what have you, you can use an activation key to do that universally to save you that round trip of another subscription manager call.
And I would show my activation key like layout because that's actually what we use for this environment. Except then everyone would see my activation keys and they could register their systems with them. That probably wouldn't be great.
No.
So actually, they can't. There's 2 pieces of information you need for an activation key to work. You need the organization ID and the activation key. Need both.
Except both would be displayed on my portal where one works with the activation keys. Womp, womp, womp.
Whatever. Who cares about security?
That's
you
right.
Want to share your entitlements with the customers? I mean, come on.
Having had to come in every few days while on PTO and delete boxes because man, I cannot emphasize enough how much I want a post provisioning or pre teardown script to unregister something. Yeah, there's a reason why I just keep doubling and tripling the number of subs that I register every year to try and gain more time between
days of
systemd stuff.
You could totally do that with a systemd unit file.
Well, if you kill the system from the outside, though, that's the kicker. I think about it for
good point.
The cloud provider type use cases. You hit terminate in the Amazon console, nothing comes back through and cleans it up. One of the things that I might want to talk to you about, Scott, because it seems like a reasonable RFE. I wouldn't be opposed to having logic like in Satellite in the customer portal to where like the admin can say stale profiles over in number of days, just purge them out. Because that's what people are doing with API scripts today anyway.
Right.
So why don't we just make it a proper first class, feature?
I would love that, Rich. Thank you.
Let's do that.
This is why we have
Sounds like
Rich,
a great
Chris.
idea.
That's why we have him on the show, because he promises to do work. We're asking about his stuff, and he's like, "Oh, let me make your life better."
Right? I love
it. That's my job.
I need to yell at you more often, Rich.
No, it just, you really sit down and think about it, right? Like, fundamentally, like, I used to be a sysadmin. Many of folks on the call are sysadmins as well. Like, dude, we got enough to do, right? Like, that's literally what everyone's saying. It's like, dude, we got enough to do. And, my responsibility is to make sure that, it's easy to use Red Hat stuff. Because if it's not, quite frankly, you'll just not use Red Hat stuff. Right. So yes, making it easy for you to do business with us, keep track of your stuff, clean up your expired systems. Because that helps me too. You got to remember those old profiles that stay around, we still count them in subscription watch as if they were live systems. Right. So it's I have a vested interest in this. So this isn't all altruism here. Okay. But I have a vested interest in making sure you maintain a clean inventory because it impacts my ability to represent how much of our stuff you're using.
Well, Rich, I want to thank you for coming on today and talking to us about Subscription Manager. It's always great when I learn new stuff, and certainly felt that way today with you. So, Chris, do we have any other questions before we roll out?
How would you unregister an air gap system?
It's a really good question. My disconnected folks, I love them. They're my favorite. Like, honestly, I used to be a satellite PM, so I love disconnected customers.
Yeah.
But disconnected systems are inherently, almost generally not registered to Red Hat's hosted portal, just because they're in secured air gap networks that can't communicate out. So usually what most folks will do in the disconnected network is they will build some kind of means of getting content into that disconnected network. Some folks use satellite for this. This is an area where satellite excels, but not everybody uses satellite, use other tools as well. But they will patch that system in that disconnected environment, basically bring the content in instead of allowing that system to communicate out. In a kind of larger picture, one of the things that my team is responsible for is making sure that even if you are a disconnected customer, you still should be able to understand how much Red Hat stuff am I using. So many of our tools, and you'll see this in Satellite specifically, many of our tools allow you to take an inventory of those disconnected environments and dump that to disk, right? Sanitize it, take out host names and IP addresses, because for subscription reasons, we don't care what your host names are, but be able to get that minimalized metadata export and be able to upload that to Subscription Watch so we can represent you're using this much rel and you're using that much OpenShift, and do so in a manner that honors your privacy concerns.
Cool.
Was that the last one, Short?
Yeah. I'm talking to one of our regulars about, ways to unregister systems automatically. Like if it doesn't respond after a certain amount of time, just automatically unregister it, and explaining how, well, network segmentation could be a problem if you're using a cloud provider and they have an outage that exceeds that time length that you've set. That might not be a good thing to do operationally, So
yeah, I mean, all of the Red Hat stuff, whether it's our hosted portal, cloud.redhat.com, or our ship software like Satellite, they all have robust APIs. So if you need to do some kind of complex automation or integration, that capability is there. I would say that for most things, especially if you're using the Satellite, there are a number of scripts and Ansible playbooks and roles that we maintain in the community in the Red Hat Satellite GitHub organization. So before you go and write some custom automation for Satellite, I would say check that out first. Somebody might have already done it.
Yeah, good point. Cool. All right. I don't know how to say this username, but Linux, please feel free to email me to continue the conversation. cshort@redhat.com. I want to look at your container file a little more.
Container file a little more. That doesn't sound like Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents.
Exactly. That's well, they're doing the
Sucking
removal
you to
of
do
the
some OpenShift stuff.
RHSM host and then adding it to subscription manager and so forth. Then enabling certain repos. So it seems like this could be done a cleaner way, but I don't know.
So CC me on that email.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know me, Rich at redhat.com. I got a cool email address.
Nice.
Yeah, me and Dan have been working with, Dan's my other PM counterpart. We've been working with the OpenShift folks around making sure it's super easy to get RHEL content into OpenShift containers. So if there's any confluence between what you're working on and this, we might be able to help.
Well, and the other thing that you should probably check out is whether the existing built Red Hat Universal Base Image, or UBI, has the RHEL components that you're already looking for. Because if you pick something like the multi-service image or the just normal image, not the minimal, you're able to get access to repo content for more software to stick in there. And it doesn't require registration or anything, because it's just using repositories that are exposed on Red Hat's container registry. So that might be an alternate way, rather than trying to subscribe your container and download repos and other stuff to it. Check out Red Hat UBI.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching today. And if you're watching delayed, thanks for tuning in later. And Rich, as always, a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for coming and seeing us today.
Yeah,
Cool.
Rich,
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Yeah, really appreciate having you on, man. Thanks. All right.
Yeah, have a good one.
Catch y'all next time.